my story is unique, and I got really lucky. Truthfully, I got really lucky.
You are an outlier. I will give you that. Because usually women your age don't get married.
I met the love of my life. I have a beautiful baby boy. Both of those things mean more to me than any job I've ever had. And my message to women is, these decisions do matter. And, I could have been really unlucky, and I would have been missing out on the most rewarding and most wonderful part of my life. So, but my story is not to be copied.
Do you wish you would have done it earlier?
Would I have done it earlier if I had left New York?
Do you wish you would have done it earlier?
The only way I wish I would have done it. Listen, I can't. Anyone who's had a child knows that they could never alter. If I alter anything about the story, I wouldn't land with this husband and this child. I want this husband and I want this child because I love them both more than anything. If I could have done it earlier and still had this husband and this child, yeah, I would have done it earlier. I would have done it earlier. And I was open to it. And I think that's the key part.
Even though doing it earlier, you would have had to sacrifice.
Yes.
Going on the View.
Yes.
Doing the things that you did during your 30s.
I had an opportunity to go back on the View and didn't do it because I wasn't going to get an experimental vaccine. So you're talking to a girl who really, priorities are priorities. And for me, like, seeing this world, I mean, every job decision I've made since I've had my family, I took a weekend job. Everyone says, oh, you were a Fox News anchor. I said, I took the weekend shift. I worked on Saturday and Sunday and a little bit on Friday, but I did that because I wanted time with my family. So yeah, I had I met this guy and had this union and had this child, yes. But I wasn't in the dating circle a lot. I didn't like New York guys. I didn't like the New York scene. I wasn't going to go out partying all the time. That's what it was all about. So I tell women, like, if you want that, like, pick up and go somewhere where that energy is more likely to be around you. I do think it should be a priority.
Do you realize that hearing that from someone like you who has the history and the background that you do, that sounds very hypocritical, right? Because the things that you've been able to do, going to Columbia, having the upbringing that you have, living in New York, going and being a pundit on Fox.
But what do you mean the upbringing? What do you mean the upbringing?
Well, I mean, as far as
I grew up in a middle-class family.
I mean, upbringing in the sense that it's a sort of a female empowerment upbringing, meaning that, like, it's like you have advantages and there's expectations of women, especially certainly the United States, but like in Western countries right now, where it's, again, as I was saying before in the beginning of the episode, a mom rather than being a Fox News pundit, being on the View, following your life path. If you choose to do that rather than what your success story for a lot of feminine, like from the feminist perspective, you're a huge success story about all this, because not only were you able to do all those things that you've done up to this point, but now you're also married and you've got a kid, right?
But I did that late.
Like, I had it all. Yeah, I know you did it late, but the thing is to hear that from you after you've gone through all of this stuff and you pretty much lived that life, and now you get to be mom afterwards. Most women have to either choose between one or the other. That's why I asked you, would you do it earlier?
Yeah, I would do it earlier.
Had you were given the choice.
I would do it earlier if I could have this.
To sacrifice those things that made you who you are right now.
Yeah, but that's why my story isn't a good example for example, like, people struggle and work really hard to get that TV career. And for me, I was always in a position where I was like, that wasn't my priority. Like, I got on Fox and that was a great opportunity and I was super grateful for it. And then I decided, and I'll try for the View. But it was not like I was this high powered, I need this TV career. This is going to define me. I'm buried down, like, looking at work. I got out of Columbia and I went and waited tables. I had a master's degree and I went and waited tables because I wanted to be happy. And waiting tables made me happy.
You were happier waiting tables.
I was happier waiting tables. And in fact, I got offered a job right when I came out of grad school to work for, I think it was Lancome. And I loved cosmetics at the time, was really into that. And the job required a lot of travel. It was a high-powered job working with, like, some high-powered woman in the company. And you could see that the path was, and I said to my mom, I don't want to travel. I don't. So truthfully, what people see is they see the success. Yes, I've been very successful. I'm very grateful for everything that's come my way. But that wasn't my mission, really. And a lot of what happened to me was lucky. Yeah, I was good at something at the right time, at the right place. And I'm not saying I didn't work hard, because I did, but I never placed that as my be all and end all. Like, that was my goal. And truthfully, if something had come along, like, I'm the part of my life right now that if you said to me, Jed, you have to choose your podcast, which I love doing and it's an amazing opportunity, or your family, Like, I'm going to my family. I'll move to
Well,
Montana and I'll
I
live on
mean,
a
everybody
ranch.
wants, yeah, exactly. Family's going to come first. But my point is this: is like it seems to me like women who follow your career track, the reason why they get to the point where they're 40 years old. And by the way, having a child at 40 is physiologically that's pretty dangerous. So the very
It's
fact
not.
that you were able to
It's
do that,
not.
no, it is very much dangerous because
It's not.
every year after 30, like the odds of you even conceiving are pretty low. And on top of that, the closer you get towards 40, the higher the incidence of like Down syndrome and you know, something going wrong with pregnancy, whether it's like, you know, a miscarriage or whatever else. So there's that aspect. But I mean, you know, it is what it is. But what I was going to say is that when you get to that point, when you go through your 30s, it's like, would you have changed anything from the
Yeah.
time you were like, say, you got out of college to the time that you were 40 years old? Because right now, following that life track is you're very much an outlier in that sense.
I am an outlier, and that's why I
reason
say
why the reason why you were able to do that was because there is this feminist life track that says, you go girl, you can have it all. You are fortunate enough to have actually had it all, right? So you've done what you're doing, you're still doing what you're doing, and you've got a family, you've got a husband, you've got a kid. I don't know what your living situation is, but the reason why you can be 40 and have a kid is because you followed this life track that said, do these things because you can't trust any man, you can't trust guys for your long-term security, you can't trust a guy to be around. Now, maybe you beat the odds, but the fact of the matter is that the narrative that's put out there that is anti-mother is also the same narrative that's saying, you go out there, be an astronaut, you can do anything you want to, you can be a fireman, you can do whatever the hell, you can be a Fox News pundit, whatever it is, you can go out and do those things all the way up till the time you're 40, put it all off, freeze your eggs, right? Your fertility is evergreen.
Yeah, and the
so,
reason
like,
it's not to answer you.
The reason why I came out, and here's the reason why I came at you at that particular time is because I was also covering Lolo Jones at that time.
Okay.
Lolo Jones just put out this thing on TikTok about like, oh, woe is me, cry about me, because I have to go and do this. She did this like Instagram story or reel or something about how she was getting herself prepared and she had to like shoot herself in the take a shot in like a syringe and shoot herself in the uterus or something like that so they could freeze her eggs because she's 39 and she's freezing her eggs because she still hasn't found the guy that God has ordained for her to be her duly assigned husband or whatever. And so she's going through this and she's, I mean, literally in tears as she's doing this. And I'm like, that is a stark contrast to, oh, I made it work for me. I got married at 39. I had a baby at 40. And so that's why I was sort of like,
and I got lucky on that too, to be truthful. And I've told people about this. I don't remember if it was on this show, but I got lucky. I got pregnant on try one. You know, I wasn't prepared for that. It could have been a lot harder. It was a lot harder for my mom, and she tried it much younger than me. And there's a fertility crisis.
Jeremy's a lot younger than you too.
She tried at 32. I mean, she was trying in her 20s. My mom, it took her 7 years to have me, so I was prepared for that as well. But my message, again, the reason it's not hypocritical is I'm somebody who wants women to have the opportunities. Like, I want you to have the opportunity to build the life you want, but I also don't want you to be blind to the reality that something has to lose, right? So there's only 24 hours in a day. There's only 7 days in a week. And if you're prioritizing something and you're doing the grind and you're making, your head is buried in work and you're not out meeting people and you're not doing any of that, and that's not your priority and work is your priority, time's going to pass and you just have to be aware that you may be giving something up. So I just want them to be alert to reality. Now, my story is weird because I wasn't buried in work. I was a teacher actually for 7 of those years where I had a great schedule and I was off all summer. I just spent a lot of time not dating because I didn't like New York guys. Now, maybe that's something else that I would look back and say, should I have picked up and moved? And I don't know if I would do that differently. Like, that time that I treasure with my family is what it is. But it's not a message of for me. My message is not like women, I made mistakes, don't do what I did. My message is, look, you prioritize one thing and you deprioritize something else. So if you do land at 40 years old or 41 or 42 years old and you look back at your life and you spent most of that time, buried in work and not prioritizing a family when what you really wanted underneath all that was a family and a husband, you might be in trouble. Like, I got very lucky and I could have easily not been lucky and not lived this very rich, beautiful part of my life that I wouldn't trade for anything else in the world. So that is my message. I mean, my life is what it is,
My counterbalance to that is really like I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying that I think the message is great, right? If you want to be a mom, like I don't think a lot of women believe that they have more time than they actually do. So when we talk about like women's biological clock, we usually talk about that right around when a woman is like 30, 31 years old. If women have a biological clock, it's really when they're 23. That's the height of their fertility window and when they can best, they're most attractive and they can carry a baby to term. And they're much more, the younger a woman is, the easier it is to have that child. Now, that's contradicted by quotes from very powerful women, such as like say Sheryl Sandberg. And I don't know if I've said this quote on this show, but if you've read my second book, I quote her in this. When she was writing Lean In, one of her advice for young women was this. It says, when looking for a life partner, my advice to young women is to date all of them. The bad boys, the cool boys, the commitment phobic boys, the crazy boys, but do not marry them. The things that make them the bad boys sexy do not make them good husbands. When it comes time to settle down, find someone who wants an equal partner, someone who thinks women should be smart, opinionated, and ambitious, someone who values fairness and expects, or even better, wants to do his share in the home. These men exist, and trust me, over time, nothing is sexier. That's the message that has been pushed really well. When was that? 2014, when she did Lean In. That's the message that is countering the idea that, oh, be a mom, settle now, get find a guy who's a good bet for the future. And what that says is like for a Sheryl Sandberg, it's like, no, don't do that. Wait till you get 29, 30, 31 years. Follow the Tomi Lahren plan, right? Wait till you're in your 30s and then hopefully you'll find the guy who's this nice, egalitarian, equal guy who you wouldn't probably have anything to do with when you're in your 20s.
Right.
But now he seems like nothing will be sexier. Going forward, just give him some time. He'll be more sexy after a while. But the fact of the matter is that she's encouraging exactly when you're getting a quote unquote alpha female like Sheryl Sandberg, who's been saying stuff like this since 2014. That's the counter narrative to what you were talking about when it comes to like start thinking now at 23 whether or not you want to be a mom or not. But the counter message is date all the commitment phobic boys, the crazy boys, the bad boys, the cool boys, right? And by dating and bang all those guys. And then don't worry, once you're 29, 30, 31 years old and then the beta you happen to marry.
I think the byproduct of like one thing that I probably did absorb that I wasn't even cognizant that I was absorbing was the idea that you have so much time. I'm sure that going through my life, I felt like there was just a lot of time for everything. I didn't know. I always was open to things. I personally didn't know like if I was meant to have kids. I didn't always know that. I wasn't one of those women that like just knew that right away for some reason. I didn't know if I would get married. I didn't know. But what I did feel is that I had a lot of time. And what you realize is that it takes time, to get to know someone, and then you get engaged, and then you move in together, you get married, whatever order you want to do that in, and then you have a baby, and that stuff takes time. That block of life takes time. So you don't have as much time as I think media would like women to believe. And that was something that I realized, I did kind of get it all in, but I just got it all in. You know what I mean? So I always say it's not, my story is not everyone's story, but when I do speak about this stuff, I do come from a place that's very well intentioned of being very open about my life and being like, it's never a mistake. Like, again, I have this child and this husband. I literally like would never trade. I am so freaking happy with that. So I can't, but I do speak to women and say, if you want a family, please like sit with yourself and look at the 24 hours you have in a day and look at what you're prioritizing and reflect on that, because you could wake up one day and you could have missed out because of your priorities being out of order. And if you don't know, sit and spend time thinking about it and really look at what that decade of your life means. And my hope is that many of them will make better decisions, whatever that looks like for them.
Women do not make that kind of grand strategy call for their life in general.
Probably
I would argue
most, but they should.
Well, women believe that they have more time than they actually do. In fact, I've said this before. Like I always bring up the Morgan Stanley rise of the she economy data. It's like, women by 2030, women in between the ages of 25 and 44, 42% of them will be single and childless. And if that's the case, if that's the prognostication, it means that people are doing their homework on this and they're making forecasts for their business so they can profit by that. So if that's the case, what do you like? Guys always make this joke, invest in Chewy, right? Invest in like dog toys, or invest in cat food, or invest in like box wine or whatever. Yeah,
Box
haha,
wine.
okay, funny, yeah. But the thing is if you really want to make a lot of money going forward, invest in anything, whether it's a startup or anything with the message that women have more time than they actually do when it comes to fertility, when it comes to reproduction. So egg freezing might be one of those, actually.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because women love to believe that their sexual agency and their sexual market. Why do we have things like body fat acceptance, or beautiful at any size, beautiful at any age? The reason for that is because we want to foment this idea that women have more time than they actually do. And then, for example, like you happen to make it work, right? It's like FOMO, it's like fear of missing out versus you only live once versus I've got more time and I can freeze my eggs, unless you're Lolo Jones and you're crying all the way to the doctor's office to go and do so. And so I think that one of the greatest disservices we do, I genuinely believe there's a blue pill for women as well.
Yeah.
And if it consists of one thing, it's gynocentrism, first of all, but it's predicated on the idea that women have much more time than they actually do, fertility wise. And they are indefinite. Their attractiveness, their arousal, their sexiness is evergreen. And it doesn't have an expiration date. And if it does, it's men's fault that they can't appreciate it. That's how you get like Paulina Porzakova at 56, 57 years old, feeling sexually invisible. They accept themselves because that's a contingency plan just in case things go to shit with the best soccer player on planet Earth. That they have more time than they actually do, or the idea that they can insure themselves against not having that time, I think is the worst disservice that we do to women, really in Western and certainly industrialized nations right now, is the idea that you can have it all. And by having it all, it means indefinitely now. So freeze your eggs. Don't worry, you're sexy at any weight. And if men don't find you sexy, well, it's because they've been conditioned by, Playboy and, Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover models and stuff like that to not find you attractive. And it's really their problem and not your problem. Yeah. So, the idea that everything is evergreen and the fear of missing out right now, it's a huge profit model first and foremost, but I think it's a huge disservice, because what happens is then you get women who get to be 36, 38, 40 years old, and they're like, where's my man? Right. I did everything I was supposed to do. Right. It must be their fault. They must be threatened by a strong, powerful, independent woman, and they just don't get with a high value woman like me. Well, the reality is guys who would be acceptable to those women don't have anything to do with them. They want to get with a girl who's 23 years old because now they can. So that's how you get women who would much rather, share an alpha male. That's how you get that situation. Because if the guy is the apex alpha, has the ability to be more sexually selective as a result, whereas women think that the things that make a guy attractive ought to make them attractive too, and it's simply not the case.
Not the same.